My 5 favorite business books. I read a lot. Well, I probably listen a little more than I read, but I like to be reading or listening to books all the time. It's a really cheap education, and there is, in my opinion, anyone who is serious about learning on any topic should always be reading a relevant book and continuously learning. You know, business is a big passion of mine, and so is real estate. And I've been reading dozens, maybe hundreds of books. And I want to show you the 5 next business books that you should be reading. Okay, guys? So the first one I want to show you, and this one may surprise you. This one's called The Goal, and it is by, what's his name? Goldratt. This is a really interesting book. This guy is the father of what's called constraints theory. And if you're dealing with business or thinking about business, it is all about where the constraint is. This is written in kind of a novel format, but it teaches the principles of the theory of constraints, which I really like. A couple of things to think about with this is optimizing the whole system, not just an individual process. Because one of the things that you'll learn is there's bottlenecks along the way, and however we can break up those bottlenecks, and that's the whole concept of this theory of constraints, is where is the constraint and how can we open that up? But when you do that, it typically makes a constraint somewhere else or breaks the system somewhere else. So how can you do that? It's not about balancing capacity with demand. It's making the flow through and the bottlenecks equals to the demand in the marketplace. So whatever is wanted there or needed there, how do I break this through so that we can actually have optimal performance? And in order to improve the throughput, the inventory, and you've got to deal with the operating expenses that go through that. So this is a fantastic book. You may say, well, this isn't really applicable to me. I'm just a solo entrepreneur. It absolutely is, because you've got to figure out where in your system, maybe your problem you've got is leads coming in, or maybe the problem that you've got is how you take care of those leads, or where those phone calls are, or that you can't get to enough properties, or you don't have enough marketing going out. If you think of this, and one of the clever things he does in this book is talks about taking Boy Scouts out on a Boy Scout hike, and he talks about where to put the kid that's the slowest. Should he put him in the middle? Should they put him in the beginning? Should they put him in the end? And he ends up solving some of these problems while thinking about taking the Boy Scouts out. So it's a fantastic book. The next business book that I've got to tell you that we have to make sure is on our list is called The E-Myth Revisited. This is by Michael Gerber. I have actually met Michael Gerber. He is fantastic. I think that this is one of the biggest things. It's basically the myth that just because you're good at something doesn't mean that you're going to be a great entrepreneur. Let me explain. The idea is just because he gives the example of making pies. Somebody that loves making pies, everybody says you should start your own business of making pies. And what he says is the idea of being good at making pies is not what it takes to be successful as a business. You see, there's a big difference between being a good pie maker and being a good pie business owner. To be a great pie business owner, you've got to understand the overall context of business and what's necessary. And in fact, he says that could actually prevent you from being a good entrepreneur, is understanding and knowing the intricacies of that. He talks about the different types of things that are needed to have a good entrepreneurial organization, that you've got to have a visionary, that you've got to have somebody that understands the products and actually knows how to deliver the services. But this is really interesting. There's a couple of things that people really forget, that having the technical skills does not mean you know how to run a business. And this basically breaks down how to run a business. Imagine your business as nationwide franchises one day, then build the first store. So the idea is systematize how everything's going to work, and use the franchise approach in how you build your business. And this applies irregardless of how small your company may be. It may just be you, but the question is, how do you handle every single point in the process? How do you handle the marketing? How do you handle the phone calls? What do you say when you're on the appointments? What do you say if you have a motivated seller lead? What does your marketing look like? Systematize, track, understand, measure. That's what this E-Myth is all about. But the biggest thing is, just because you're good at something doesn't mean you're going to be great at running a business. Now, that's not to say that somebody's great at making pies can't learn how to run a great pie business, but it's quite a bit different, and you've got to understand those skill sets, and the skill sets for running the business are more important than the skill sets than making pies. The great example of that is McDonald's does not have the best hamburgers. I hate to break it to you, but they sell more than anybody. So why is that? Because they've got a system that delivers that and delivers those the repeatable results that are actually happening. So E-Myth Revisited, one you should check out. Now, this could be a little bit of a financial book. This could be a little bit of a business book, but this is a book that actually changed my life. It's called The Richest Man in Babylon. It is written in a story format, and it talks about a lot of financial principles. And one of those that I want to highlight here is spend less than you make and save and invest the difference. That alone is the most important thing here, is spend less than you make. You're not going to hear that anywhere these days. Spend less than you make, and then what do you do with the difference? You invest the difference. That is huge. Use saved money to make you money. So you've got to invest that so the money that you're saving is actually making you money, which is how you grow your wealth. Another thing that you've got to realize with this book, it's a small book, guys, so it's easy to read. The other thing we've got to talk about here is only take advice from people skilled in that field. This is one that comes back time and time again. Maybe you're interested in getting involved in real estate investing, and all the naysayers are saying, don't do it, it won't work, that type of stuff. Well, you shouldn't take advice from people that aren't skilled in that specific field. Getting advice from somebody that doesn't know what they're talking about doesn't really help, and there's a lot of opinions, and there's not a lot of good advice that's out there. Only invest your money in industries and skills you're very familiar with, or you'll lose your money. So you want to make sure you invest in things you know and you understand. That's one of my rules of investing. I only invest in things that I understand and know, or I don't invest my money. Don't wish for a lump sum of cash. Work to achieve a constant cash flow instead. The idea is work for cash flow. Don't work for this big net worth. Oh, I want to have $1 million. Who cares about having the $1 million? I want to have $10,000 a month in cash flow. That's what this book goes into, saying you should be working for. So Richest Man in Babylon, this is one you've got to check out. It's a fantastic book. Now, next book I'm going to share with you, this is called The Millionaire Next Door. Now, I have to tell you, The Millionaire Next Door is a little dry. It is a little dry. It's written by a couple of professors, and the idea is they wanted to understand what millionaires did and who they were. So what they did is they rented this big penthouse suite in New York City or something like that, and they got caviar and all these nice foods and everything, and they started inviting these people that were millionaires that were up there. And most of the millionaires that went up there didn't like the caviar, had never tasted it before, and didn't want to. So they went in and they said, well, who really is the millionaire? And what they wanted to say is, who's the millionaire living next door? Well, there's a couple of factors that they found with a typical millionaire, and they're things we can apply to our lives. They live well below their means, kind of back to our Richest Man in Babylon. They live well below their means. They allocate their time, their energy, their money, their efficiency in ways to building wealth. So they're saying, how can I help build my wealth? They believe that financial independence is more important than displaying high social status. And that was one of the biggest things that they didn't realize, was all the fancy cars and all these nice things. That was not important to the millionaires. It was important to them is having financial independence. That was the most important thing, more important than high social status or anything else like that. Also, their parents did not provide economic outpatient care, is what they call it. Basically, their parents weren't feeding them. Their parents didn't keep sending them money and that type of stuff, which you would think may be the case, but it certainly is not. Also, their children of the adult parents are economically self-sufficient. That's one of the most interesting things, because I think when you think about millionaires, they basically take care of their kids or do that type of stuff, and then their kids don't have any work ethic or anything else. Well, the fact of the matter is that real millionaires next door, their adult children are economically self-sufficient. They don't have to get money from their parents, don't ask for money from their parents, wouldn't want money from their parents. I find that to be very profound. They are proficient in targeting market opportunities. So millionaires are really good at saying, where's the opportunity? And I'm going to go find it. And they choose the right occupation, which is really, really big. They talk about this concept of big hat and no cattle. It's an old Texas thing where people who had the biggest hats were the ones that were supposed to have the most money, when the reality that they said they'd wear big hats even if they didn't have a lot of money. And so the whole concept here is the Millionaire Next Door. It is a little bit hard to read, I'll tell you that, just because it's a little bit dry in some places, but it's something you've got to check out that will help you think about the mindset of how to become a millionaire. Okay, now, next one that we've got to say here, and this is my last one for today, but more to come if you're interested. This is a classic. This is How to Win Friends and Influence People. If you haven't read this book, it is a must. I would make it your next read because it really comes down to a few principles of how to communicate. And that's one of the big things I would say. Most people don't understand communication or how to communicate. And I don't care what you're trying to get into or what you're trying to do or what business you're trying to build or what investment you're trying to do. If you don't know how to communicate, you are not going to be successful or as successful as you could be if you understood communication. So a couple of principles they go through is don't criticize, condemn, or complain. That's a huge one in today's society. Don't criticize, condemn, or complain is one of the principles they talk about. Another principle they talk about is giving honest and sincere appreciation. Another one they talk about is arouse in the other person an eager want. Now, one of the things I really learned from this was this whole idea of being a good listener, because if you can be genuinely interested in other people, it makes a huge difference. So you want people to like you, and people like you if you listen to them, if you become genuinely interested in them, if you smile, if you remember the person's name, if you can say their name. People love hearing their own name. And so that becomes really important, and also talking in terms of the other person's interest. If I know someone's interest, I like to talk about things they're interested in and make the other person feel important and do it sincerely. Those are some big things when it talks about how to win friends and influence people. So guys, I hope that you've enjoyed all of these. Just to give a quick review, we've got The Goal, we've got The Millionaire Next Door, we've got The Richest Man in Babylon, we've got The E-Myth Revisited, and we've got How to Win Friends and Influence People. If you're interested in these business books, you may be interested in what the average profit on flipping a house can actually be. Check out this video I've put together. What's the average profit my borrowers are seeing, how to calculate it, that, and hidden costs that few remember that really can eat into your profits and how you can avoid them. Check out this video. What is the average profit on flipping a house?